Welcome back. I want to talk about our solo canoe lineup in this video, and we're going to talk about the 5 solos that are all kind of comparable to one another, and then we're going to jump into the 80Ks after that. And so we've got the Magic, which is lakes. We've got the Northwind Solo and the Trillium, which are lakes and rivers. The Northwind Solo and the Trillium are siblings, bigger and smaller, but otherwise same performance characteristics. And then we've got the Phoenix and the Firebird, which are rivers and lakes. And again, siblings, bigger and smaller. So between the 5 boats that we're looking at, the Northwind Solo and the Phoenix are roughly the same capacities. The Firebird and the Trillium are roughly the same capacities. And the Magic is in between them. So what that means is the Northwind Solo will carry the most, the Magic is next, and the Trillium has the smallest capacity. So when I say the Magic is lakes, what does that mean? That means that it has the lowest rocker of the 3, and it's the lowest rocker of the 5, I'm sorry, and it's the longest of the 5. It's 16 feet long. It's got 1.5 inches in the bow, 3/4 of an inch in the stern. It is designed to go fast on a lake. It's designed to track really, really well. Northwind Solo and the Trillium, 2.5 inches in the bow, 1.5 in the stern. So now we've got a boat that has greater maneuverability, but still that asymmetrical rocker for really strong tracking. So still very good on lakes, but able to handle rivers more, so just greater maneuverability. And then the Phoenix and the Firebird, now we've got symmetrical rocker. So now we've got 2.5 bow and 2.5 stern. These 2 boats want to turn. They're not as efficient to paddle on lakes. You'll spend more effort making them go in a straight line. But on a river, they want to catch eddies. They want to spin much more easily. They're better for back ferries if you're paddling with a heavy load in a solid class 2 rapid. And then let's talk a little bit about the fullness of the boats, because this is a great way to compare them. We're going to look inside the Magic, and this is what, about 2 to 3 feet back? Look at my hand in there for a second. I can span it very easily. And we're going to jump over into the Northwind Solo, and we're going to make that same sort of comparison. And I can still span it, but my hand is a little bit further into the boat now. So it's a little bit fuller in this area. It wants to ride up over the waves more easily than the Magic does. The Magic is a finer-ended boat, therefore faster. The Northwind Solo, you give up a little bit of speed in return for some buoyancy over waves and that kind of things. The Magic is a little bit narrower at the waterline than the Northwind Solo as well. And so then we're going to jump over to the Phoenix, and we're just going to look at that fullness aspect one more time. And we're going to put my hand down. Wow, now I'm all the way down in the bottom of the boat almost. And it's just that much more full. And so what's going on? The Phoenix and the Firebird want to ride up and down over the waves the most. They sacrifice, of course, that forward speed for that fullness, that dryness. So run through big waves in whitewater and that kind of things, by all means, these are the best 2 choices. Want to run lakes, but run some whitewater? Northwind Solo and the Trillium. Strictly lakes, the Magic. And so what we often get is comparisons between the 2. People call up and they're trying to discern which boat to go with. And once in a blue moon, you get somebody that calls up and says, I'm looking at the Magic and the Phoenix, and you go, wait a minute, wrong choices, guy. You want to be looking at either the Northwind Solo and the Phoenix or the Northwind Solo and the Magic. Or if we're talking about a smaller person, you want to look at the the Magic and the Trillium, or the Trillium and the Firebird, because the equation is simply capacity. How big a person are you, and where do you want to paddle the boat? And if you're my size, about 200, 210 pounds, the Magic's fair game if I want to paddle lakes and I want to go on a week-long trip and take 70 pounds with me. The Northwind Solo, if I want to do a week-long trip, take 70 pounds with me and take a 50-pound dog. Now, this is a much better choice for the boundary waters and lake travel. Or If I want to paddle primarily rivers and I want to do a trip, say in Wabakimi or Attica Key, I want to run the Blood Vein River, something along those lines. Now I want to look towards something like the Phoenix, because again, I can put me and that dog and the gear in, and I can run some whitewater with this thing. What if I'm 140 pounds? Well, the Magic is still fair game for lakes, but now I've got another alternative for lakes, not the Northwind Solo, but the Trillium. And in many ways, the Trillium is sized the best for a 140-pound paddler, especially if you're traveling lightweight. It's the lightest of the boats by a pound or so, but much more importantly than that, it's the one that's sized right. And so if we're talking about a couple, for instance, oftentimes what happens with couples is you got the husband in the Northwind Solo and the wife in the Trillium, or you have the husband in the Magic and the wife in the Trillium. On occasion, you'll also do Phoenix and Firebird that way. But really, we want to end up with boats suited for the person's size and the gear that they're going to travel with. We want to set you up with a boat that is going to be the way that you paddle it 75% of the time. So if 75% of the time you're going to paddle this thing unloaded and you weigh 152 pounds and you want to paddle rivers, the Firebird is a great choice. If you're doing a heavy whitewater and you're 190 pounds, the Phoenix is a great choice. Want to do a mix of everything? Can't decide? Northwind Solo and the Trillium, no question. So that's a rough splits between our solo boats. All of them are available with kneeling drops, and so you see them almost all have sitting drops in them right now. But we'll rig them for kneeling if that's what you'd like, and that just raises you up all the more so you can get your feet underneath the seats. We'll rig any of them as pack boats as well. And so we'll talk about pack boats when we hit the 80Ks a bit more. In fact, let's jump over to the 80Ks for a second. So what do we got here? We got the 80K and we've got the 80K LT. And so these are smaller boats. You know, you're not going to do an expedition the same way you would with a Northwind Solo or a Phoenix out of an 80K LT. But if you've got a 50-pound plastic kayak that you can't put on the roof of the car anymore and you want a boat to do short paddles with, the 80K LT is gold. You know, for the person that weighs 160 pounds, the LT weighs 18 pounds in starlight. And if you're having trouble putting the boat on the car, if you live near water and you've just got to walk a couple hundred yards, when you've got an 18-pound solo canoe, you impulse paddle. You go down to the water just because you can for an hour. Whereas when we look at some of those other solos in starlight, they're 26, 28 pounds. And if the bulk of the time you're going to spend is short paddles and you want to paddle, especially with a kayak paddle, the LT makes a ton of sense, as does the 80K. And these, again, are simply capacity issues. It just depends on how big a person you are. 210-pound bear, 80K, only option. 135-pound wife named Claire, LT. And so you're making decisions that way. You can see they're both rigged as pack boats. They've both got the kayak-style foot braces. And as I mentioned, we'll rig any of the other solos as pack boats. We won't rig these as canoes, though, because they're a little bit too tender. They don't have quite enough initial stability to handle people hanging from the gunnels high up. And so let's talk about pack boats versus canoes for a second. We'll exclude the 80Ks because they're only pack boats. But if you order a Firebird as a pack boat versus a canoe, what's the difference? Well, obviously you sit on the floor versus sitting up higher. And what's the impact of that? Well, when you sit on the floor, your center of gravity is lower, so you're more stable. You can generally carry a little heavier load because of that. When you sit up higher, you get a better view, and it's easier to get in and out. So you make a sacrifice, you get better stability versus better ease in and out of the boat. Better view. You can change positions more easily in a canoe, in the sense of, you know, one foot can go under the seat, one leg can get stretched out, all that kind of things. In a pack boat style setup, you're a little bit more fixed in your location, but it is kind of a to each his own. Upsides of pack boats, of course, you got the foot braces that come with the boat, so you are locked in, you are wearing the boat. If you got a sitting canoe seat, we certainly do offer foot braces that way. And if you're kneeling, of course, you are wearing the boat because you've got 3 points of contact with the boat. Your butt as well as your knees, and your center of gravity is lowered as well. And then the last video that I think I'm going to try to do is what I call canoe esoterica. It's all just the weird stuff about how canoes work and that kind of thing. So we'll jump into that in the next one. Thanks for listening.